So welcome everyone. My name is Jane Kelly. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director at the University of Toronto Press. Today we're going to be doing a book launch for our newest book in the ethnographic series, which is Light and Dark Times, The Human Search for Meaning. So we're very excited to be doing this launch. We will be doing this launch live on YouTube, live on Facebook. I don't believe the chat is enabled for this session today, but please type in your questions for Charlotte and Alisse using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So now I will pass it over to Brianna.
Thanks, Jane. Hello, everyone. My name is Brianna Muir, and I'm the Associate Marketing Manager of the Social Sciences List here at University of Toronto Press. Before we begin the launch of Light and Dark Times, we would like to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto Press operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people, and we feel truly grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. So before I turn it over to Alisse and Charlotte, I would like to introduce today's moderator, Shireen Hamdi. Shireen is the Associate Professor of Anthropology at the University of California and is the co-author of Lissa, a story about medical promise, friendship, and revolution. Shireen is also the series editor of UTP's ethnographic series. And like Lissa and Light and Dark Times, books in this series engage with a broader public on contemporary issues and use ethnographic research combined with unique elements of graphic narrative. So welcome, Shireen. And with that, I will turn it over to you to introduce Alisse and Charlotte.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy that you're joining us, and I'm so happy to launch the occasion of this beautiful book. So it's my great pleasure to introduce the makers of this book. Alisse Waterston is the Presidential Scholar and Professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City. And aside from Light and Dark Times, she's written many other books, including My Father's War, Migration Memory, and The Violence of a Century. She has also written Gender in Georgia, Feminist Perspectives on Culture, Nation, and History, or co-edited, and Anthropology Off the Shelf, Anthropologists on Writing. So we can see her thinking on creativity outside of traditional writing early on. And she served as president of the American Anthropological Association from 2015 to 2017. And we're gonna see how her figuring in that role was the genesis of this book. I'm also really happy to introduce Charlotte Corden, who is the artist behind these beautiful images. I can't help keep touching them and looking at them. They're really astonishing. And Charlotte has a strong background in anthropology. She's also worked in ethnographic projects in innovative consulting. And she's been a full-time artist, illustrator, and animator for the past 4 years and is based in the UK. So I'm really happy to start off this conversation. And I'm going to share my first screen because I want to show the image of the collaboration when I asked you about how this all came into being. And you have such a beautiful image of what it was like when you collaborated. So could you tell us the story, Alisse, about giving the presidential inaugural address right after Trump's election and how we were all very, very depressed and upset?
Yes. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you. First to you, Shireen, for being the host and moderator of this wonderful day and fun moment, the launch of Light and Dark Times. And, you know, to Jane, and to Brianna, many thanks for organizing this, and to the University of Toronto Press for publishing our book, and of course to Carly Hansen, who is our editor, to Anne Brackenberry, who was the visionary behind the ethnographic series. And I'm so thrilled to be a part of the series with your book, Shireen, and the others in it. So it's really a thrill for me to be here. And before I go to the story of the 2017 origins of Light and Dark Times, I want to also say that I realized that it was 1 year ago that I met with Carly in Vancouver at the annual meeting of the AAA, of the American Anthropological Association, where we talked about the possibility of publishing with you. And there were 3 issues of concern to me and to Charlotte, as we had discussed it ahead of time, that we wanted to see happen with this book. One, what had to do with the quality of the production. And I'm thrilled to say that it's high quality, all color production. The other was the price point for the book. We wanted a book that people could really, that would be affordable if we're reaching out to larger audiences. We wanted this to have a good price point, and it does. And the third was that it would be ready for the next annual meeting of the American Anthropological Association, which would be happening right about now. And of course, we can't be, the AAA meetings were canceled for this year, but we are here today. And in some ways, this is even a better celebration for the book launch, because at AAA, we would be sort of confined into a little space at the book exhibit. And here we are, really having guests from all over the world. So I know I took a long time to say that, but I just wanted to mention that. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about that. So now the origins. So here's our story. So yes, as you said, I was president of the American Anthropological Association, and as part of one's duties as president, the night before your term ends, you give an address to those who attend the American Anthropological Association annual meeting. And for me, it was an evening in December of 2017. And I stood up on the stage to give this talk, this address, that I titled 4 Stories, a Lament, and an Affirmation. And what I did was prepare a talk that put together all of the different strands of ideas and experiences that I had in the field of anthropology. And I wanted to convey to this audience of about 1,000 anthropologists what I had learned, what I had come to understand, and what I thought we needed to do as anthropologists. So it was a very powerful and moving moment for me. The next morning, when I was to be finished with my activities, and lo and behold, I received an email from a staff person at AAA, and they shared with me this most incredibly gorgeous.
Should I show it again?
I'm sorry?
Should I show it? The image?
Illustrated rendition of my talk. And it was created by this amazing artist, Charlotte Corden. And I'll stop here because I would like Charlotte to talk about, if she would, her experience of it. But I will say, before I turn over the, to Charlotte, that my husband said, when he saw this beautiful illustration, he said, you need to create a graphic book with this woman, and it needs to go out to the whole world. And I said to him that, leave me alone. I'm tired. I want to rest. I'm just done with my term as AAA president. It's been a very rough couple of years. And I don't want to do that. But then later I thought about it, and I realized that he was correct. And I reached out to Charlotte, and then our story unfolds from there. So Charlotte, can you share what your experience was that night in December?
Yes, very glad to. So hello, everyone. It's lovely to be here at this amazing occasion. I can't believe that it's actually happening. when we started this venture together, Alisse and I, we had no idea if we would have to self-publish, if we'd find somebody who would publish, and here UTP are with this incredible series publishing our book. And we are just so thankful and grateful to them for taking this on and for making it what it is, a reality. And yeah, we're super proud. I'm just so amazed that we've come this far together, and it's been a beautiful journey. So it began when I went to the AAA meeting. I'd been invited to attend the American Anthropological Association's annual meeting as part of a panel. They have loads and loads of panels, like hundreds of panels at this meeting. And I was speaking about creativity in anthropology, and especially drawing. And whilst I was there, I was doing sketch notes of different sessions. And especially the sketch notes of the keynote session. So I was in the audience as Alisse got up to speak. And I'd been sketchnoting all day. Sketchnoting is where I take my iPad into a room and when someone's giving a talk, and I'm just there drawing out the notes in illustration form as they're speaking. Anyway, so as Alisse began to speak, I immediately knew that everything that she was saying was just so rich and full of imagery and full of meaning beyond which I could do anything with right there and then in that moment. So instead of sketchnoting it, I made the decision not to sketchnote it then, but to take a million notes as fast as I could. As she actually spoke every word, I was just struggling to write it down because I knew I wanted to go away and spend a couple of hours with what she'd said and combine it into something that I understood. I wanted to use drawing as a way to think through what she'd said. And that's key because for me, drawing is a tool for thinking. It's a way to go deeper into the meaning of something and to see what the associations are, literally to see them on the page together and understand how big that one is and how small that one is. Like how does that affect our human lives this way or that way, and begin to draw them out so I can draw the meaning out further in my own mind. And yeah, and so I went away and I did this illustration that night and shared it, and then Alisse got in touch. Well, she got in touch the next day and said, wow, that's great. And then you got in touch about a month later after Christmas and said, would you like to do a book together? And Alisse, what was going through your head at that moment?
Well, so one thing going back to receiving your gorgeous illustration. I mean, can you put it up again for a second, Shireen?
Happy to. Yeah.
So I was so struck by the drawing because Charlotte did pull out so many of the elements that were powerful and meaningful to me and what I was trying to convey. So the darkness, as you can see, you know, in its all its fierceness. And then if you see there, the lifting the cotton wool of obfuscation and the little bits of light and illumination. And on the bottom right is the rushing outward of knowledge, which I think is so incredibly essential. And then the little specks of color that, like the red. So all of that combined, you know, just the colors alone, coupled with the words, made me feel heard and understood. And actually, just this weekend, I've been reading a book by Ellen Wiles, a manuscript. Actually, it's in manuscript form. It's called Live Literature. And in it, I just pulled out this quotation I want to share with people because it was so relevant. When I read it, I said, oh my goodness. And it was from the novelist Colm Tóibín. And this book, Live Literature, is about literary events happening live. when writers speak to audiences at various different kinds of live events and venues. And he wrote the way he feels about these live events, which my address was on a live event, is, he wrote, if the audience gets it, you feel you've actually shared it, or evoked it, or communicated it, or done something to it that allowed it to affect them. And that, when I read those words, I said, wow, that is exactly how I felt when I received Charlotte's gorgeous illustration. So then we went from there. Charlotte is in the UK, and I am in New York. And we just started our venture via Skype conversations. And then we each gave ourselves tasks to do, to try to take apart, you know, a talk, an address, and translate it and turn it into a graphic book, a journey, which is what how we present the address, the story, a journey of encounters with the people that I had quoted in my talk. And so there were a lot of challenges along the way. But I'll say that after we worked remotely for some time, then Charlotte had a brilliant idea. You want to talk about your idea, Charlotte? And what happened?
Yeah, so I'd been traveling a little bit before that, and it had been difficult to find the time to really get in deep with Alisse's words, and I just knew that I needed a substantial amount. I needed, 6 weeks or 2 months of just focusing on getting the draft copy together for this and trying to break down her speech and turn it into a book format with her. And so I said, why don't I come to New York? I've got friends in New York, so I was like, I could stay with them, and we could do the book together there, and it could be a full-time thing for me there whilst I do a few other illustration bits on the side, other pieces of work, and yes, and then Alisse said,
but I have a house, and all my kids are grown up and out of the house. So my house is your house. So come to my house. And she did.
It's amazing looking back. We were strangers, and you invited me into the house, and we, and it was incredible. So I lived in Alisse's house for 6 weeks over the summer, and then another 2 months through. Don't even know, 3 months. It was a long time, and in the next round that we did of full-time illustrating every single day, it was intense.
Yes, very intense.
Intense, but wonderful. So we know each other really well. I mean, you can't not know each other really well when you live together like that. And it's been an incredible time. I mean, I've never collaborated with anyone like this before in my life, and to do it with Alisse, whom is somebody who is so good at articulating to the depths of what she really means, which means that for me as an illustrator, I can really go there in the images and understand that what I'm describing in the images is exactly what she means. And it's not some kind of wishy-washy version of it. It's exactly what she is communicating with her words. And to have that kind of symbiotic relationship with words and illustration is the dream. It was just amazing.
Well, I'll just say that definitely comes through in the art, that you understood each other and that this bond was there. And if I can show again, not just the originary message, but another thing I wanted to ask you about was, well, I love this gesture of Alisse standing there, and then you're following her, Charlotte, along the path, that you're in the blue and you're kind of wide-eyed. Like in the gestures of the people, you communicate so much, and you communicate that you're kind of in awe of what Alisse is telling you, and you're following her along this path, even though you don't know where it's going. You just sort of have that trust. And the next image I wanted to show was, where is it? I wanted to show how you introduce all of the different characters with these same gestural movements. So how you picked, with Alisse, she takes her glasses off. I've noticed that a lot. And you have these sort of open arms sometimes with Paul Farmer, for example, and Hannah Arendt as this older person, and she's gesturing really widely. And then sometimes you have these really closed poses with Virginia Woolf. So I just wanted to hear a bit more about what you were communicating to us with the gestures and the postures of the people.
Well, this goes back to my work, just of being human, of being centered around what it is to be human. And a lot of my illustration career really began with little small drawings of people, on birthday cards and gifts for people. And so I can't help, in a way, draw people with a gesture. It's very difficult to draw anybody that's not doing something or expressing something. And so when I was thinking of each of these characters, I think it just came naturally that knowing Alisse, who just always taking her glasses off and putting them on again, and it's just, that's her, and Galliano, who's this guy on in these 3 columns on the top right, who dares the reader to dream. He must be someone I've never met. I don't know very much about him, but he must be somebody who is open to that, and somebody who stands open to that. So that's why he's standing like that. And Virginia Woolf, this is actually a classic pose of her. I took, so Virginia Woolf, for everyone who's watching, is the 3rd one down on the left-hand side, famous author, I'm sure you know her. This is taken from a famous photograph of her sitting in actually her mother's dress, I think it is. It's a famous portrait of her, and she has such poise, and I wanted to communicate that. So it's a little bit behind that.
Wonderful. And if I can show the next, something else I was really struck by, besides this sort of blind faith that you show in following Alisse where she'll take you, even though you don't know where she's going. The other thing I wanted to point to was this free fall. Mm-hmm. So here on the right part, the fall is, again, this sort of, you don't exactly know where you're going. It's this embrace of where the journey will take you, which sort of sounds like how you embarked on the book. And where you're going is knowledge and learning more and more. And I was really interested that in this falling image, we see it again, but this time it's when Alisse says, it's not as if we've perfected our discipline. We have these ideals and we have to keep trying even when we fall short in reaching them. And then we have that same gesture of falling. So I wondered if you could say a bit about these 2 kinds of falling moments.
Yeah, I think the image of the falling, it happened naturally because it was this feeling of following Alisse into the unknown, into something that I have no idea about. And actually it's really complex and complicated, and Alice in Wonderland definitely came to mind. I mean, it's far more logical and real and important, really. I mean, we can't really compare the 2 works, but I did have that feeling a little bit of, Alice down the rabbit hole, because what I was learning from Alisse on a day-to-day basis was her whole, all of her knowledge that she thought was the most important to share for right now. There's a whole career of knowledge I was downloading like in a day or in half a day, like trying to get to the bottom of exactly what she means by this, or get to the bottom of exactly what she means by this. And she'd be quoting me writers and quoting me other people, and it just felt like I was just in this other world of understanding and knowledge that I'd never entered into before, but that I was fascinated by. And that's hence the falling picture in that one, falling through knowledge. And then the second falling, this series actually is, I actually made a small video of the time when I was trying to figure out how to draw this series that starts at the top of the page. Anthropology taught me that looking is not necessarily seeing, and seeing is not necessarily perceiving, and that perceiving as understanding, as illumination, is a central goal of anthropology. even if we fall short in reaching it. And I was struggling to know what to draw at this point, because it wasn't obvious to me what space we should be in, what the characters should be doing. Like it's really high level philosophy, really. And how do you attach that to reality or some kind of visual anything? And I was walking around the room, and I don't know, does Jane, do you have the video that I shared with you? Possibly. If you could share the screen on that, because that explains a little bit.
I do. Give me a second just to get it queued up if you want to keep talking.
Well, you know what? Can I interject something here then? While Jean is getting this up, that at our day-to-day process, we sat in the basement of my house. We set up, we took my grandson's roll of his drawing paper and wrapped the walls of the room around with it. And that was our storyboard base. And I would sit on a couch and I would talk. And Charlotte would walk around. And Charlotte, you know, often, you know, as I was talking, we were in dialogue, Charlotte would walk around and give me what I thought were dirty looks. I thought she was angry at me half the time. Like she was like this. And then of course I came to learn that she wasn't angry. She was thinking, and she was trying to imagine what she was going to draw. And what generally happened was, then she would walk over to the wall and scrabble something. And then I would come over and she would explain what that scrabble was. It was her visual, her vision of the visual representation of the bit of conversation that we had just had on whatever that topic was. So here now, maybe it's ready now, Jane, I'm not sure, but take from that experience of our dialogue and the interaction we had, and this little video vignette of that process.
Yeah, I'll share it right now.
Oh, so this is us. So this is the wall, you can see. This is
yeah,
the video that I thought you were going to show. But this is me walking around. This is us in the basement. And you can see we had this wall here where we had some printed stuff out on the right-hand side. And we would just sit and talk. And I would just go up there and scribble. And Alisse would come back and I'd scribble again. And like, we just spent forever just talking about tiny little bits. And you know, I look back at the work that we did at this point, and it's mostly just scribbles. It's mostly just around a bit here and around a bit there. But what we were trying to do was get a sense of the whole book and get a sense of, you know, where is the light parts, where are the bits that we need 2 big double page spreads to say this one very important message, and what are the bits that are going to be you know, just a series of images, like the series of images we were just talking about. And if we can go back to that image, Shireen, that you were talking about the falling and the footsteps. So in this particular moment, I was walking around that room that you just saw, and I was just pacing and pacing and pacing. I was watching my feet as they kind of hit the tiles, just going round and round and round, thinking, I need some inspiration here, please, you know, like something, give me inspiration. And it just arrived. Like I had already drawn this before for someone else, this exact image. I often do drawings as gifts for people, as if I think, oh, you know, this would really bless this person this way, or if I perhaps, you know, this would really help someone if they knew that they were loved like this, or that they saw themselves in this way. And so I'd often draw drawings for people in that way. And I'd drawn something really similar for someone in the past. And as I was walking the footsteps, I realized that I was literally walking out the drawing that I was trying to create. I needed to see what to draw, and that seeing is not necessarily perceiving, and that perceiving as understanding as illumination is central. But I was literally doing what I was going to draw, and it just, the whole world at that point seemed to just collide all at once. And I couldn't believe it.
And Charlotte, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but Jane has that other video ready, I think.
Oh, great. Yeah, if you can play it, it kind of explains it in a different way.
While we're doing that, Charlotte, quick question. Somebody's asking which program you used on your iPad.
All right. Well, hang on. Whoa. Can we play that again, please, Jane? I'll answer. I'll just talk about this drawing, and then. So here you can see. This is what I meant. Like I was just pacing the room, pacing the room, trying to figure out what on earth to draw, and then literally it hit me just like that, like a bolt, and I just ended up drawing these little footsteps going in a circle, thinking this is exactly what it is. It's so hard to see. It's so hard sometimes to perceive what to do and how to understand this world. And then the falling short and reaching it. Again, that fall was just because, well, that was exactly what the words were saying, is that, you know, sometimes you sit there and you think you have it all, and, you know, you don't. And you just feel like you just, the ground underneath you goes again, and you're sort of back to square one, but we try. We get
I love that. That video was amazing. Thanks so much for sharing that. That was really great. Yeah, so someone in the chat is saying that, you know, often we anthropologists can be very perfectionist and it's hard to be 100% happy with the final product. So what, if you had to go back and change something, what would it be? And also on a practical level, what program did you use, Charlotte?
So I'll answer this, and then maybe Alisse can answer the first part of that question. I use Procreate. So it's a really great app, the best app that's out there on the iPad. And I use a large iPad with Apple Pencil on Procreate, and that is amazing. You have to watch a few tutorials to get the hang of it, but once you do, it's the sky's the limit. It's incredible.
So the first part of the question was about not being 100% happy.
How do you, if you would,
so I have a very different hit on that, and I've had that for decades, ever since I was a graduate student. When I learned at that time, I was a single parent at the time, and I knew that I could not ever reach perfection, and I delivered you know, papers and my dissertation when I said I would, or when it was due, and I didn't delay as many of my, you know, friends and fellow classmates did, you know, looking for perfection, because I don't think we're ever going to get to that. And of course, there's always things that we would redo or reconfigure or whatever. But I believe that, you know, a lot of people say that I'm highly productive, which I am, and that's in part because I'm so driven. You know, I need to find a way to rest. But there's another thing, and that is I live and work by a schedule. And Charlotte knows that, because I'm, you know, okay, we made this as our deadline, so we need this deadline. We need to meet the deadline. Even if we go past the deadline a little, you know, at a certain point, we have to stop and we have to deliver. And that's how I've operated to great success. I'm so thrilled with the final product. I am sure that later I might look at things and say, oh, well, we could have done it this way. But you know what? I don't have those kinds of regrets with my work, because that what that means to me is that the next project to work on can be informed what I've now learned. But I do think it's really interesting to think about our works as unfinished, you know, and the beginning of something else, not just for our own selves, but also for, you know, who we imagine we're doing this for. Because I think one of the most exciting things has to do with the reception of the work, whether it's this one or any other of our works. We never know how it's going to be received, and it's a wonderful adventure to have the experience of what Didier Fisson talks about as the afterlife of our books or our works. And I think that's the stage that Charlotte and I are now entering.
I remember when I was first convincing you to get this into ethnographic series, and you told me, I write very fast. I make deadlines, and you definitely did that. So that was a true promise. I want to read a very nice comment from the chat from Natalia Rose, who says, Alisse, it's great that you're creating new paths of anthropology, like an illustrated book. The form is different, but the content of the message is the same and very valuable because it has a chance to reach a larger audience than the academic world. A scientist who doesn't have the strong academic position that you have would not dare to take such a step. But now we can follow your example. Thank you.
Oh. That's really great. That's really, I so appreciate that comment, and thank you very much. And I do think it's actually part of our responsibility as senior scholars to, junior scholars may want to engage in, and many are right now doing very wonderful, creative, what we call in anthropology, multimodal anthropology, different ways of communicating knowledge and conveying knowledge. And I think this is wonderful. And we're at a really wonderful moment for that, I think. And our discipline is, ahead of others, I believe, in embracing such creativity. But I also think, it's not a but, it's an and, I also think that it's very, important that the senior scholars embrace when junior scholars are trying to do unique things and creative works, and as well experiment themselves with it. And I think we can turn to the association as well for support in that area. The American Anthropological Association has a series of guiding documents for tenure and promotion committees that argue and that give evidence for why it is important and valuable to accept alternative modes of disseminating and communicating knowledge. We have a responsibility to do that.
Judith Friedenberg writes, your collaboration makes me think about how much we lose by writing about people and publishing without going back to them to check whether we really understood what they had shared with us. So, feeling that Charlotte had really gotten you and then being able to move from there. Yeah. And Jane Peake writes, Charlotte spoke about learning the years of knowledge from Alisse. I'm interested to know what Alisse learned from Charlotte. Did you have any new discoveries by seeing how she works?
So Charlotte, yes. So a couple of things. First of all, Charlotte, part of our process, part of the intensity part of our process was, in this book and in my talk and in my work, my life's work, it's entering, what Sherry Ortner, who's a character in the books, calls dark anthropology. And it's hard to go there. And Charlotte, we would go to the darkness a lot in our conversations. And that's a lot about what we're talking about in the basement. And it was difficult and very painful. And Charlotte, if I can speak for you, I'll say my impressions. My impression was at different times it became too much to go to the darkness. And so, sometimes I take things for granted, that, isn't it obvious to everybody that this is going on in the world or that is going on in the world? But it isn't necessarily obvious. And so I think that what I learned from Charlotte was about patience and openness. Charlotte is so open, and her pores are just open for knowledge and for understanding. And it isn't necessarily comfortable, because in our dynamic, sometimes it was testy at times. Sometimes I was impatient, and sometimes, she was annoyed, we had our fights, our moments. So I think that's one piece. And then the other piece was really just the extraordinary aesthetics, the beautifulness, her art. I mean, I would take her hands in mine and say, I want to kiss your hands. You're so talented. It's so, remember Charlotte? And, you know, because she would take this an idea, as we've been talking about, and then turn it into something absolutely phenomenally gorgeous. And how did she do it? So there was that too. And then I can see also in her drawings, her rendition of an idea or a concept that, you know, I might have articulated verbally or in writing, but she has helped me see it at another level of understanding, which is very hard to put into words. And Charlotte also, I've always dabbled in painting watercolors and things like that myself. And there were many happy times when Charlotte was, you know, my instructor, guiding me in painting and drawing too, which I really miss her. And I wish she would come back and give me some more art lessons. It's really extraordinary experience.
Wow. Thank you, Alisse. That's incredible. I've never, thank you, Jane, for the question. I've never heard, that's a great question. And I feel really touched and honored by what you said. So thank you so much.
So, Alisse, you had mentioned earlier that there were challenges. I mean, we're seeing, you know, there's such a huge response, and we're all so touched by your beautiful artwork, Charlotte. And we can see how you're taking the ideas of anthropology and really broadening the reception. But of course, there's a lot of challenges to doing this kind of work, the time investment, the cost. And so I was wondering if you could speak to some of those, and then if you could maybe advise anthropologists who want to embark on this kind of more creative visual work.
So, you know, I think sort of on a mundane, not a mundane, that's incorrect. You know, we had the challenge of translating an address, a talk, a speech into a story, a narrative, and how were we going to do that? And we, you know, one of the things we did for initially and for our homework for ourselves was each of us took apart the speech and pulled out what we thought were the key lines or key themes. And then when we came together, we saw where we converged, and we converged mostly on everything, which was interesting. So certain things, you know, fell by the wayside, but other things rose to the top. And that was when we were working via Skype. But during that time, we were, you know, how do we make this a story? Which is really difficult because it's not necessarily the kind of work that it's not a, you know, an ethnography per se. It's about the ideas and theory, you know, it's a lot and abstractions, as well as political realities. So, so we went through all these different renditions. In fact, there was one point where the way we were going to introduce the characters was by having peepholes, and then you go into the peephole and you would learn all about Hannah Arendt, and then you would have something else, and then go into another peephole. And actually, it was at a dinner with Susan Theriault and Fran Macielese one night at Fran's home in New Jersey, where I was sharing with them about our challenges. And I believe it was in that conversation, and it was Susan who said, why don't you have it be a series of encounters with them instead of this whole peephole business and it, just as with Charlotte's image that she showed us a minute ago, and it was like, yeah, that makes sense. And so that is how we, I couldn't wait to get back to Charlotte to tell her about that epiphany, you know, that moment. And so thank you, Susan and Fran, for the conversation that led to that. And so this is the story. It is this journey and this series of encounters with these individuals. And it's such a rich way because we get to meet new people, you know, who are from different disciplines along the way. And when I say we, I mean the reader viewer of the book. I'd love to share, if I could, when Charlotte and I presented it at John Jay to John Jay College students that first time, and the three immediate reactions to what we had done up to that point, which was obviously not the finished product. It was in the fall of 2018. And after we presented, these were the first three responses. The first response was students said, "This is so accessible." You know, and Charlotte and I were like, yeah, that was a key goal. That's a key goal. And the second student said, "I never heard of Hannah Arendt before, but now I want to know more. Who was she? I want to know more, and I want to read her writings." And again, this speaks to what we as educators, want with our books or with our classes. We want people to be inspired to find out more. Not that our book or our work or our lecture is the beginning and the end of the exploration. It's not the end of the exploration. It should be the beginning. So that was a wonderful moment. And then the third person who responded was a young woman who literally had tears streaming down her face. And she said, "This is my life." So Charlotte and I knew, remember that, Charlotte? It was, we didn't even know what to, we were like this. Oh, it was such an amazing response.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. Charlotte, we have Dee Palmer's asking you if you could talk about how you manage the challenges of creative blocks or creative frustrations in the process. We saw the beautiful video of how you came out of one.
Yeah, it's not always like that. I think, well, for any creative block, of which you have many depending on what's going on, usually the best thing to do is just keep working. I remember getting some advice from an older illustrator about this, about how when you don't feel like working, or you feel like you can't produce any good drawing, what do you do? And basically they're like, if you want this to be your job, if you want this to be your full-time thing, then you have to just keep going, because eventually you'll find something, eventually you'll get somewhere. But if you put down, and sometimes it is good to take a break, and I would often run. I find that actually running is my way of getting rid of a lot of the heaviness that that often comes with creative blocks, but also that came with doing this book. And I pray. I think that's probably the number one thing that I do if I have a creative block. I pray and I ask for inspiration that way, and often that it can be astounding what happens through that. So yeah, if you're going through creative block, those are your tips.
Thank you so much to both of you. Professor Mike Fisher is sending us a question. He's asking if you have thoughts about how we can find illustrators, I think by we he means academic anthropologists, on a more regular basis to help articulate anthropological and ethnographic work.
It's hard. That's a very difficult question to answer. I mean, I guess there are practical ways. Our story is about serendipity, but I think it's it's a story that's situated in our discipline, in the sense that we didn't just come up with this at this moment. There has been conversations in our field for decades about communicating knowledge, writing anthropology, the politics of representation, and many books, including the one I did with Maria Vesperi on anthropology off the shelf, and Carol McCranahan's wonderful new book on writing anthropology, and Helena Wolf's beautiful book too. So there's a lot of for decades we've been having this conversation, and so, I think one of the messages that could help with that is that comes from Light and Dark Times is about finding other people from other disciplines, artists and so forth, is we anthropologists, or all academics, need to not be so narrow-minded and stuck in our own silos about, who we embrace. And so, I think that more and more we're seeing anthropologists, embracing different disciplines and experimenting with different art forms themselves. So I think that the more we do that, and the more we open ourselves to others, I think we'll make those connections with the artists and the filmmakers and the performers, but we just have to actually put ourselves out there and make it be known that that's what we're looking for. And then I'm sure there's practical ways. I don't know if there are artist organizations or illustrator organizations or something like that.
Yeah, just on that, just quickly there. Yeah, it is hard. It is really hard because this collaboration between Alisse and I she didn't pay me all the way through or anything like that. This was definitely a collaboration where I was just like, I wanted to do this. This was like the thing that I absolutely felt I had to do, and nothing was going to get in the way of that. And so so we did it, and the money didn't matter for this book. And I think sometimes the best work that you see in history is when people haven't done something to get paid. They've just done it because they thought it was important, or they came from somewhere else. And it is really hard to find good illustrators to work for you. And I think I remember Shireen, I was actually at your event at AAA when you were talking about how you found illustrators for your book, Lissa. And you went and found some uni students, I think, who were amazing. And these two girls illustrated this amazing, incredible ethnographic volume that Shireen has co-written. And yeah, and so students is one way, like Shireen went and found students, but another way is just finding somebody who gets what you want to do and will just do it because they're going to be the best person for that. And also finding a way to pay them well is probably really good too, but I get that that's difficult.
That's structurally, I think that's a really interesting point, because we came into this as partners in it. We were going to take the risks, and we were going to, enjoy the benefits if there would be any benefits, and there are benefits on multiple levels. I'm sure, we already are experiencing them, but as far as material benefits, that waits to be seen. But I guess you're right. There are other formats, like forms of arranging, you can hire an illustrator, this one was not like that. This project was about the two of us making a commitment to the project, and then seeing how, and taking the risks, as I said, with it as well.
Mm.
Was it worth it, Charlotte?
Oh my God. Yes.
That's so nice to hear. Yeah. I think we have time for one last question. And the question we wanted to ask was about the now, the moment that we're in right now, after the last election, the global pandemic, environmental, racial unrest, and what does it mean to have published about the light and dark times at this particular moment?
Well, I see that we have like 3 minutes left for this. So I will just say that if this book can bring readers and viewers to go deeply into the darknesses of our times, and then accept our call to unleash their imaginations, to participate in undoing the darknesses, then I will say that I am thrilled that Light in Dark Times has arrived at this moment.
Charlotte?
For me, it's offering people hope on founded understanding and about our times, but it's also hope because these things aren't new, and we say that in the book. These destructive means of of like political forces. They're not new, and actually we can learn from them as a society, and that is hope in itself, that we can learn and that we can do better. And that this is coming at a time when I think a lot of people lack hope, and a lot of people feel the oppression of the systems around them that are failing. You know, that's it for me. Like, you can offer someone hope that things will be better, and that actually it's up to us, really, every single one of us, to make that better. That's how do we want to be human? That's the message of the book, and what a message to bring at any time. Like, I think it's fantastic. So
Beautiful.
thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Shireen and Lissa and Charlotte. So Light in Dark Times, The Human Search for Meaning, is available from the University of Toronto Press website and also Amazon. So that was wonderful. That was a wonderful conversation. Thank you to everyone. We had some great chat going on the panel, and some wonderful questions and supportive comments. So thank you to everyone who also tuned in.
Yeah, thank you. Can I interrupt you to say thank you for coming?
Jane, Charlotte, Alisse, I just think this is a testament to the power of openness and risk and daring and taking on new challenges that both Charlotte and Alisse exhibited, and just really excelled in this collaboration. Says so much about who you two are as people. And I'm just so honored to have been even a tiny part of it and to have seen it come to light.
Oh, thank you so much, Shireen and Brianna, Jane, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, so much. Thank you, everyone, for coming, for the wonderful time that we've had together sharing. It's just been so special. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.